Hello, good day. We're going to have another lesson today, and this is a review of what we have discussed in the class. Today, we're going to analyze the article, to be exact, the non-literary text magazine article, and we're going to use the OPVL as a framework for our analysis. The title of the article is Respect Our Roots, A Brief History of Our Braids by Sinaad Lershi. Okay, now, this is the framework that we're going to use. It's very simple, it's easy to understand. Okay, so here are the things that we have to identify and explain and analyze. So, main idea, origin, purpose, value, limitation, and conclusion. Okay, so once again, this is our article. This is a magazine article. This is our text, a non-literary text. Again, this is the title, Respect Our Roots, A Brief History of Our Braids. And the writer is Sira Dorshi with additional reporting by Rachel Williams and Hope Bright. Now, let's apply the framework, okay, when we analyze. The first thing that we have to do is to identify the main idea of the article. Okay, so when we read the article, the main idea is this one. The braids of Black women reflect the history and struggle of the Black people. So that's our main idea. So that's the one that we need to explain and to analyze. Okay, now, the second thing that you have to do is to identify the origin. And it's actually very easy. I want you to remember the 5 important questions. Identify who has written the article. Identify where it is published, when it is published, how it is published, and why. The why is when you explain the significance of these pieces of information. Actually, all of these pieces of information tell us something important about the article. It tells us something about the history of the writer, the historicity of the article, the ideology of the article. Let's take a look as we apply it when we analyze this article. So let's identify who is the writer. Sira Dershi is a contemporary journalist writing right now. She's still a young woman and she's still active in writing. She has written a lot of articles actually that center the narratives of Black people. So that's Sinaad Dershi. The second is, where is it published? So we could answer that in various ways. Where is it published? Specifically, it's published in Essence magazine. And it's a digital publication that is based in America. So it localizes the experience. So this experience is in America, the Black people in America. When is it published? June 27, 2018. This is a very recent article. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. 4 years ago. And that's very important that we can see the articles that center the lives of Black people. On one hand, we already see the rise of this movement to center the lives of the Black people. But on the other hand, it also tells us that racism, discrimination based on color, continues to exist because people are continuing to resist it. It's not normalized yet. Equality is not normalized yet. To a point that there is still a need to continue to center Black narratives because it still exists. In fact, 2 years after this article has been published, comes the Black Lives Matter movement that has been sparked because of the killing of George Floyd. And so, what am I saying here? Racism, discrimination based on color continues to exist. And so, we must continue to talk about it and to resist it. Now, the third question is, how was it published? It's published as a digital fashion magazine. There are two things that I want you to identify. It is significant that it is a fashion magazine. We have a very superficial notion, or we look at magazine as something that is superficial, right? But apparently, based on reading this article, we realize that even our notion of what's beautiful or what's aesthetically pleasing is shaped by biases, or by histories of colonization, of one power dominating over another, right? If you only think that the Eurocentric look, the Caucasian look, is the only definition of beautiful, then to a certain extent, there's an inherent bias that you have that had been inculcated in you. And so this article is trying to broaden our definition of what's aesthetically pleasing. And at the same time, it's also telling us about the importance of braids in history, right? Our notion of what's beautiful is shaped by history. Okay? And the other thing that is very important also is digital, right? So this is digital. So to a certain extent, it allows not just people from America to read it, but people from other country. Like me and my students are in different country, and yet we have access to it. So it allows the reach of the magazine to go beyond its locality. So that's origin. Now, let's look at the purpose. When you identify the first thing that you have to do is you have to identify the purpose of the article. And of course, you don't just end there, you explain the significance of the purpose. So the purpose of the article is to inform people about the historical, cultural, and personal significance of braids for Black people. And why? Because this is part of the movement to center Black people's narratives in order to empower them. Alright? Now, let's go to the fourth thing that you have to identify: value. Value. What is the worth of the article or the idea inside the article? And there are a lot of value: historical value, economic value, political value, social value, personal value, the value of the idea to us personally. And then you provide textual evidences to back up your claim. And to explain, of course, you have to explain the significance of the value that you have identified. Now let's have one example, and I chose historical value. Braids reflect the history of the Black people. So here are the evidences. So a specific look could indicate the clan you belong to, your marital status, or your age. In the beginning, braids have certain affluence attributed to it. So it's something that matriarchs pass from their daughter, and their daughter pass on to their daughters. So there's a prestige and respect that is associated to braids. So it used to indicate a person's specific social status within the clan. But then came the era of colonization, which is a horrific era for a lot of people. So slavery came, colonization came, and if you don't know, a lot of the people that bear the brunt of slavery are Black people. So as the women endured the rigors of slavery in America, braids became more functional. What used to be an accessory becomes something that is functional, right? the women needed to get their hairs out of their faces, right? So that they could work more, or so that they won't have a hard time, okay, physically, right? They're already being, uh, they're already going through life, right? The dominant power is already uh, putting them through misery. Of course, people needs to find a way to at least make their lives a little better. So, the braids is something that that symbolizes the practicality of the people. Of course, thank God, thank the divine being, and thank you to all those who fought for freedom. Um, to a certain extent, it ended, slavery ended. But of course, a lot of the biases came. Emancipation in 1865 brought about a longing to leave all things reminiscent of that horrific time behind. The horrific time pertains to the slave trade during the 15th century. Because during the slavery, the time of slave enslavement, the braids had become associated with something negative, with the trauma. Um, when the emancipation came, a lot of the black people rejected it. And they did not reject the braids because they just don't want it, but because of the trauma associated with it. And to a certain extent, if you look at it, it's understandable and even logical, right? Um, but of course, doing that is also not very good, because it brings down the sense of self-worth of a lot of black people. And um, a lot of women, a lot of black people started to change themselves. They're trying to force their naturally curly hair to become straight. They're trying to change the way they look. So, although we understand that they don't want the bad memory, there are bad memories associated with braids. Now, because they're rejecting their authentic skin color, their authentic hair, they are now creating another horrific memory. Physically, the dominant power has ended, but there are a lot of inherent biases, right, that had been left behind. And the most difficult is when your own mind is telling you that you are a second-class citizen. When you are telling yourself that you are not beautiful. And that's the worst kind of colonization, the worst kind of domination. That's ideological state apparatus, completely inherited, completely inculcated in you. So the good thing was, Black Power movement came. The Black Power movement of the 1960s affirmed us. Us, the writer uses us because she wants to prove that she belongs to that community, and rejected the Eurocentric framework of beauty. With the coming of the Black Power movement here, a lot of the icons of the popular culture, the singers and the dancers and the actress, have started to wear their natural color, and they have made they have they have celebrated it. And so a lot of people have realized that I can still be beautiful and I can still be successful even though my hair is in braids. And so once again, they return to the roots, which is, it now becomes something that is a symbol of affluence. But because of the slavery and the history, it also symbolizes something else. It symbolizes the resilience of the people. All right. So that's the first one, right? You identify the historical value. That's already a good analysis, but to make your analysis stronger, provide another value. So identify another value and provide textual evidences and explain its significance. Now, I chose the social value and the personal value of the article or of the idea inside the article. And this is how we have answered this in the class. Braids reflect how Black people fought oppression in their own ways. Given the difficulties, right, you are at the risk of losing your life. We understand that a lot of people have been silenced, but that does not mean that they did not try to fight. They fight in their own ways. They subverted and they fight and they continue to keep themselves, their legacy, their identity. And braids actually have a very practical purpose, and not just practical but a very clever purpose. According to the article, braids also served another purpose. They became a secret messaging system for slaves to communicate with one another underneath their masters' noses. Tharp explains that people used braids as a map to freedom. They used their braids to help their fellow people escape the thwart and the difficulty of slavery. So they have used it to preserve their lives. And that's such a clever way of using it. Back then, it has that social value. And with the coming of the Black Power movement, when the pop icons have commercialized the idea, now braids becomes a symbol of self-love, of valuing yourself. Now, Black people are realizing that they are worthy of being a pop star, of being a popular singer, and that they have the capacity to do whatever it is that they wanted as long as they work hard and as long as they have the discipline, they have the talent. This has allowed them to break into a lot of places and become whoever they want to be. So it becomes an icon of self-love and self-acceptance. All right. Even though my students are not Black people, the reason why I want them to read this is because a lot of the struggle and history of Black people is also something that they can relate to. Those who have been colonized have shared struggles, shared problems, and a lot of them are have experienced colorism and racial and discrimination based on color, because we may not be Black but we're brown, and a lot of people continue to look at us as second-class citizens. And I'm telling my students and I'm telling myself that we are not, that we are worthy of our place here in the world, and that we can be whoever we want to be, and as long as we work hard. All right. So you identify the value. The last thing that I want you to do is to identify the limitation. All right. When you say identify the limitation, you identify the limitation of the idea or ways in terms of the production or reception of the text. So you look at the gaps and you explain the significance. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay, just because you point out the limitation does not invalidate the validity and the credibility and the value of the ideas that you have already mentioned. But if you point out the limitation, you set the proper expectation. You set the proper expectation, and it allows you to see, right, that perhaps the article itself also has biases that needs to be corrected. And one of the limitation that we have identified in the class is that to a certain extent, the article demonizes people from other culture who choose to wear braids by calling it cultural appropriation. We actually do understand now that we have seen how important it is in the history and the culture and the social lives of the Black people. But to a certain extent, this territorial way of looking at braids as solely the cultural product exclusively for Black people engenders extremism and might hurt the cause of empowerment in the long run. Anything that is extremist has the tendency to destroy things. Racism is extremism in action. So you're just changing, right? You're just changing the masters. But extremism can still cause danger. So be careful, right, of when you are becoming an extremist. And remember, as much as braids belong to the Black people, hair is universal. And it is possible that in other cultures, it might also occupy an important part, right? And we also need to understand that it is not solely the product exclusively for Black people. Anyone can use it, right? But if someone will use it, make sure that you do it in a respectful way. Because as the writer has explained and pointed out, there are a lot of history and important ideas associated with it. All right? So that is the limitation. And then you end your analysis by identifying a conclusion. And a conclusion could be a reiteration of the main idea. You just say your main idea again. And you leave a message. You give a message that leaves a lasting impression. So your conclusion could be like this. The braids of Black women reflect the history and struggle of the Black people. Therefore, people shouldn't be penalized for wearing it. Right? The Black people shouldn't be penalized for wearing it. And Black women should be celebrated for wearing it. All right? So that is the article that we have analyzed today. If you have a similar article, you can follow the framework and that will help you to analyze it more deeply. Okay? So again, what's the framework? Identify the main idea, identify the origin, the purpose, the value, the limitation, and end it with a conclusion. Okay, so this is the article that we have analyzed. My name is Herbel Santiago. I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, I'm an IB educator. I use literature and all types of texts to teach social justice, to teach fairness and equality to people. You can read more of my works at herbelsantiago.wordpress.com, or you could also check out some video lessons at wordmatterstrainingacademy.com. Okay, so that's our lesson for today. Analyzing a magazine article using the OPVL framework. Remember, everything that is in your midst is a text. There is an idea inside that text. You only need to analyze that deeply to understand its message and its importance. Everything around you is a text. Think about them and analyze them and use them to make the world a better place. Thank you for your time today. Have a great day. Bye.